The sun over Wyoming's wide prairie had barely risen when Miss Clara Winslow stepped down from the stagecoach. Her gloved hands clutched a small carpet bag, her hat slightly tilted from the long ride. Dust swirled around her boots as she looked up at the sprawling land. Golden fields, a weathered barn, and a white ranch house that stood proud against the horizon. Clara had come from St. Louis, leaving behind the noise of city streets and the quiet ache of loneliness. She was 25, gentle but determined, and known for her gift with children who couldn't speak. The letter that brought her here came from a man named Samuel Carver, a rancher whose daughter had not spoken since her mother's passing 2 years prior. When Clara reached the porch, the door opened before she could knock. A tall man stood there, broad-shouldered, sun-worn, and silent. His eyes, a deep blue like mountain lakes, studied her for a moment. "Miss Winslow?" he asked in a calm, gravelly voice. "Yes, sir. I received your letter." He nodded. "My little girl's inside. Name's Lily. She hasn't said a word in a year and a half." Clara smiled softly. "We'll take it one day at a time." Samuel stepped aside to let her in. The cabin was simple but full of warmth. Wooden floors polished by years of work, sunlight spilling through lace curtains, and the faint scent of coffee and horses in the air. In the corner, sitting with a rag doll on her lap, was Lily, a small girl with honey-blonde curls and watchful eyes. When Clara knelt down, the child flinched slightly, clutching her doll tighter. "It's all right," Clara whispered. "I'm here to help you talk again." Lily didn't answer, but her eyes softened just a little. Clara lifted her hands and began to sign, slow, gentle motions that told the girl her name. To her quiet surprise, Lily's eyes widened in recognition. She raised her hands timidly and signed back, "Lily." Samuel's brows lifted from across the room. Clara turned toward him with a quiet smile. "She knows some signs already." "She used to," he murmured, crossing his arms. "Before her mother passed." The day passed slowly, the sound of the wind brushing the tall grass outside. Clara taught Lily small signs: sun, bird, friend, each one earning a tiny smile from the girl. Samuel watched silently from the doorway, his hat in his hands, as if afraid his presence might break the spell. When evening came, Clara stood to leave. "She's bright," she told him softly. "She remembers more than you think." Samuel's gaze met hers. "It's been quiet here too long." That night, as Clara settled into the guest room, she heard faint laughter through the wall. Small, soft, the kind that belongs to a child trying to remember what joy sounds like. Days turned to weeks. Clara spent each morning teaching Lily in the shade of the cottonwood tree behind the house. They played with sticks, wrote letters in the dirt, and signed words together. Sometimes, when the sun got too hot, Samuel would bring out lemonade without saying much, setting it beside them and tipping his hat before walking back to the barn. At first, he was just the quiet rancher who hired her. But Clara began to notice the small things. How he fixed Lily's doll late at night when he thought no one saw, how he spoke softly to the horses, how his voice dropped low when thanking Clara for her patience. One evening, as the sky turned crimson, Clara sat on the porch while Samuel repaired a broken fence post nearby. "You're good with her," he said, hammering another nail. "She just needed someone to listen," Clara replied, watching the sun dip lower. "Sometimes silence speaks louder than words." He paused, leaning on the post. "You sound like you've known silence yourself." Clara's eyes flickered with a hint of sadness. "I lost my fiancé during the war. Since then, quiet places have been my refuge, and my punishment." Samuel's hammer stilled. "I'm sorry," he said simply. She smiled faintly. "We all carry something, Mr. Carver." "Samuel," he corrected, offering a small grin that softened the edges of his usually guarded expression. From that evening on, their conversations became easier. They spoke about crops, rain, books, and Lily. Always Lily. Slowly, the house filled again with the hum of laughter, of footsteps, of life. One morning, Clara and Lily were reading on the porch when a sudden gust blew the pages of the book across the yard. Lily giggled, actually giggled, and ran after it. The sound froze Clara in place. She turned toward Samuel, who stood in the doorway holding his breath. "It's the first sound she's made in 2 years," Clara whispered. He nodded slowly, emotion tightening his throat. That night, as the stars shimmered over the ranch, Clara sat by the fire writing in her journal when Samuel approached quietly. "She laughed today," he said. "You gave her that." Clara closed the book. "She gave it to herself. I only helped her find it." He hesitated, then took a step closer. "You've done more than you know. For her. And for me." The firelight danced across his face, showing a man who'd learned to hope again. Clara felt her pulse quicken, her heart suddenly too full for words. Then, from the doorway, a small voice broke the silence. "Papa." Samuel turned sharply. Lily stood there, her little hands trembling, eyes wide with surprise at her own voice. Clara gasped softly, tears welling in her eyes. He dropped to his knees, arms open wide. "Lily," he whispered, voice cracking. She ran to him, and he caught her, holding her close as tears streaked through the dust on his face. Clara turned away, overcome, the moment too sacred to interrupt. When Samuel finally looked back at her, his eyes shone with gratitude. "You brought her back to me." Clara shook her head gently. "She was always here, Samuel. She just needed someone to remind her." From that day, the ranch was never the same. Laughter echoed through the hallways again, and the quiet that once weighed heavy was replaced with warmth and song. One afternoon weeks later, Clara prepared to leave. Her work was done. Lily could speak, laugh, and live freely again. She stood by the stagecoach, hat in hand, the wind tugging at her dress. Samuel came to see her off, Lily holding his hand. "You sure you have to go?" he asked quietly. Clara smiled. "There are other children who need me." Lily tugged at her sleeve. "Don't go." Clara knelt down and hugged her tight. "You're brave now. You can talk, sing, tell your papa stories. That's a gift you gave yourself." When she rose, Samuel was standing closer than she expected. His voice was low, rough with emotion. "You changed our world, Clara. If you ever get tired of traveling, you'll always have a home here." For the first time, Clara couldn't find words. She simply smiled, eyes glistening. Then she stepped onto the stagecoach, glancing back one last time at the ranch, the man, the girl, the land glowing under the sun. As the wheels rolled forward, she felt something new in her chest. Not loss, not sadness. Something lighter, like the sound of a child's laughter carried on the prairie wind. And somewhere in the distance, Samuel watched her disappear into the horizon, knowing his quiet world would never be the same again. As the coach vanished into the golden haze, Samuel whispered a silent promise to the wind that if fate ever brought her back, he'd never let her go again. Clara looked back once through the dust, her heart aching yet alive. In that fleeting glance, their eyes met across the distance. Two souls forever bound by love and gratitude.